Welcome to the My Creative Days podcast, where we will talk about all things DIY, home decor, decorating tips, and creating a beautiful home on a budget. I am hoping our time together will spark a creative idea, help you plan your next DIY, or inspire you to finally tackle that project you keep putting off. Grab your favorite cup of motivation and let's chat. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to talk about a topic that I've learned the hard way over the years, and it's a topic that came up on my Instagram page, so I thought it would be a good topic to bring up here in the podcast. So we're going to talk about how to pick the right paint color for your home or your space, depending on what you're painting. But I'm going to kind of go over just 11 little tips and tricks that can help picking out a paint color easier and make sure that you get the right color every time. So first of all, number one is choose the paint color that goes with the decor and the furniture and the things that you already have in your house. So I have repainted and painted every room in our house multiple times. And I will go in the beginning, I would go to, the paint store or your local Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, wherever it is that you get your paint. And I would just look through the swatches and I would find a paint color that I loved and bring it home, paint the walls, and find out that everything in my home is a warm tone. So I like a lot of neutrals, but they're more on the warm side. And then I would go and pick out a gray paint color, even if it was a light gray paint color. Once you get it on the walls, it just didn't match what I had in our house. So I immediately didn't like the paint color or just wanted to redecorate our house. And so that's not always going to be, that's not going to be feasible. So definitely pick a paint color that goes with what you already have in your home or in that space. It's going to be a lot easier. It's going to save you a lot of time and a ton of money because you're going to have to repaint it or you're going to have to buy new decor that will go with that paint color that you picked out. So definitely choose a paint color that goes with what you already have. Okay, secondly, what are your Pinterest boards saying? Look at your Pinterest boards. What are you pinning? What are you drawn to? What kind of spaces in rooms and decor are you liking? You're pinning a lot on your Pinterest boards. See what they are saying about what you like on walls or in spaces and go from there. Head to the paint store with that knowledge alone because your Pinterest boards, I think it's fun. We all pin, right? We are all on Pinterest all the time and we pin all kinds of things. But if you actually, how many of us go back and look at what we've pinned in the last year, 6 months, 2 months? Just pick one of your boards. So if you're painting your living room, if you have one that's, a Pinterest board that's, home decor or living room inspiration or living room ideas, go and actually look at what you're pinning. It's amazing to see the, how similar most of them are. You definitely will have a feel or a look or a color scheme going on in those boards. So make sure and check those out. It'll just make it easier for you. You'll remember, oh my gosh, yes, I did love that living room. I forgot I pinned that, or I forgot that living room was that color. I'm going to go with that. It'll just kind of spark some ideas, some inspiration, and maybe narrow down your choices before you even head out to the store. Okay. Third, neutrals. I kind of talked about neutrals. I do love neutrals and they're always a good choice, but I think people when they hear neutrals think that their walls have to be white or they have to be beige or they have to be not at all. Blues, greens, grays, those are all neutral colors. It's just getting it in the right shade that makes it neutral. So you definitely don't have to paint all your walls white, but neutral colors and shades do best because then your actual decor, your rugs, your throw pillows, your blankets, those kind of stand out against those neutral colors. And those become like the showstopper. Those become the things that actually people notice or you notice as you're walking in and out of that space. So neutrals are always a good place to start. And then next tip is do not commit with a swatch alone. So if you are inside the paint store and you're looking at all the swatches, do not buy 4 gallons of paint just from a swatch alone. So I mean, I could talk about this topic alone for forever. So swatches are great. They kind of give you a general idea, but even when you're inside the store, some of the stores have come up with different like lighting things that you can put your swatch underneath so you can see what the color is in fluorescent light and natural light. And, they have they tried to come up with that, but they are definitely nowhere near what this paint color is going to look like in your home at all. Even if you don't have that in your store, have that little lighting feature that they tried to help, just being in the store, the lighting in that store, there's, are there windows? There's no window. Is there any natural light? Is it all artificial light? All of those things, it definitely will not represent what that color is going to look like on the walls in your home. So do not commit to a paint color just from the swatch alone. Okay. And then my next tip is hold up the swatches together. So let's say definitely you're going in and you are painting. I'm just going to keep this simple. It's going to be a white room. So you're trying to find which white. Do you want a cool white, a warm white? What color do you want? So this always helps me is when let's say I just kind of walk around and just kind of start picking up swatches of white colors that kind of you're drawn to. You'll definitely find ones that you're like, whoa, that really leans to the green side. That one really looks purple, but just kind of go around. And if you can find 5 white swatches that you really, really like, get them together and hold those swatches up next to each other inside the store. And you will definitely see which one is leaning more yellow if you don't want to go yellow, or which one is leaning more pink if you don't want to go pink. Is there a purple undertone, whatever it is. But when you hold the swatches together of the same kind of color family, or like white or a beige or a gray, whatever it is, get them together, the swatches that you like, and you will be able to narrow down those choices just by that, because you'll definitely see when you put them together, which, some are going to pull in a different direction that you don't want to go. And then this is the best tip. And this is, to me, it's the only tip to make sure you're going to like the color, is to buy the samples. Matt and I used to not do this. And we have learned, we have been up till midnight or 1 a.m. thinking we're going to paint this living room in our house now blue. And I went and picked out a blue, and oh my goodness, we painted the entire living room. Our entry kind of is connected, then down the hallway. Oh my gosh. It was so bad. It was so bad, but it's kind of like, you never want to judge a paint just by one coat, right? So, oh my goodness, it was just that was a definite fail. But, now anytime we're going to paint any room, no matter if it's in a flip house or in our own home, we always buy samples, because it's going to give you the best representation of what that color is going to look like in that actual space. So definitely buy samples. They're usually $3 to $4, depending on where you're going. It could be a little bit more, but you're going to save money and you're going to save time by buying those samples. I wouldn't say you need to buy 12 every time. By doing some of these other things to look at the colors, it'll narrow your options down. So do those things first. And then when you've got your options narrowed down, then definitely buy samples of those colors, just so you know exactly what it's going to look like in the space that you're putting it in. And when you are putting those samples on your wall, you want to use a roller. Sometimes with the paint, you can use a paintbrush, but I think, most of us, if we're painting walls, we're going to use a roller. So if you can just buy, some of those 4-inch rollers, it's just going to kind of give you, again, a better representation of what that color is going to look like. And sometimes if we put it on with a brush, you can get some brush strokes, or you put it on too thick, and then that's all you can focus on, the brush strokes, and it's too thick, and so you're not actually just going to look at the color. So get some of those 4-inch foam rollers to put it on, just so you can get the best representation. And don't put it on. Okay, you've decided you're going to paint this space or this room, right? So don't go and put the samples on a little corner so nobody sees them. You're painting. You just now need to find the right color. Put it on the middle of the wall. All of your samples, put it on the middle of the wall, kind of like your height or eye level. So then you aren't having to, get in a dark corner and not really see what it's going to look like, around the rest of the room that you see all the time. So put that sample on the wall up high in the middle of the wall. You're going to paint over it anyway, and you just want to make sure that you're getting the best color and the one that's going to work right in the space. And then after you get a couple of coats on, don't do one coat either, just because that's not going to show you the color. Don't do just one coat. Do a couple of coats, get it covered so you know what the color is going to look like. And then let it dry, walk away, and then you need to look at it at every, different times of the day, morning, noon, and night. Go down or go into that space and look at that color on the wall, because it's going to look different at different times of the day. It'll look totally different. So you want to make sure that you love it every time of the day, throughout the day. So just make sure you look at it at different times throughout the day to see what the color actually looks like on the wall. Okay. Sheen is something that you definitely want to think about. So you can get anything from flat to high gloss paint. Most of the time it's a preference. We definitely stick in the satin range, usually when we're doing walls, just because flat paint is so hard to clean and wash. And if you've got kids or you're just living there, you're going to get things that you're going to want to wipe off the wall or, so we kind of stick in the satin area. High gloss, a high sheen. Those are good for, your trims, or I'm thinking like a railing or something that's going to get a lot of use and dings. So, but the thing with sheen is that depending on the sheen that you choose, it'll be a different color. So Matt and I have done this in a couple of rooms in our house. Back in the day, they're not there anymore, but we have done stripes on our walls. And we picked up the same color, but we got it in different sheens. So one was like a flat and the other one was a satin, or maybe it was just like a satin and a gloss, not too far, apart on the sheen, on the sheen spectrum. But, so we striped the walls, we used painter's tape and we striped them. And then we did every other one in the different sheen, and they look like totally different colors on your wall. It looks like you painted the stripes in two different colors, and they are their exact same color, but they're just in a different sheen. So definitely keep in mind the sheen when you're picking out a color. Don't get a sample in, because I think some stores, the samples, like a flat paint is less expensive than like a satin or a high gloss. So don't go get a flat paint sample and then decide on one. And then, you get the satin gallon and it looks different. So definitely think about sheen when you're choosing your colors. Okay, here's a good one. There's a funny story that goes along with this one, but the undertones of paint colors is a big thing to think about. So when I say undertones, I'm talking about like if you pick a gray color and but it leans a little more purple, or it leans a little blue, or it can even lean green. So it just kind of has that green undertone or a purple undertone or a blue undertone. Paint colors like grays, whites, even like if you get into some reds and purples, they can just kind of lean a little bit. Their undertone is just one certain way that you may not want to go to. So definitely think about the undertones. And a good way to find that undertone is if you're getting the swatches that have, they go from like light to dark, dark to light. Let's just say you're picking gray, just to keep it simple. You're picking a gray paint color. When you pick up that swatch that has multiple, goes from light gray to dark gray, look at that darkest option on that paint swatch and see what color that looks. Does it look purple? Does it look a little bit blue? Does it look a little bit green? That's going to kind of tell you what undertone that lighter gray color is going to have. So that's a good way to look at it. The funny story is my mom, she didn't take me with her to get paint, which is totally fine, but she went and picked a gray color for her bathroom. We were remodeling her bathroom, and so she just kind of wanted a light gray color. And so she got it done, and I went over and I'm like, oh, you chose I said, oh, you chose lavender. And she looked at me like, no, I didn't. It's gray, right? It's gray. And I'm like, oh, yes, it's definitely gray with a lavender undertone. we still laugh about this because I really thought she picked a lavender paint color. And so she's telling my aunts, her sisters, and she's like, oh, Lindsay walked in and thought it was a purple bathroom. But definitely you've got to look at those undertones. And a good way to do that is if the paint swatches have the light to dark, you can kind of look at that darker color. Another great way to do it is, like I said, when you're picking up, like gray paint colors or gray swatches, if you've got 5 in your hand and maybe they don't have, some swatches are just the color alone. So if you're getting those, pick up your 5 choices. And if you hold them together, you can kind of get a great idea about which ones are leaning more, pink or blue or green. You definitely, when you're holding them together, can totally see that. So that's just another way if you've got the swatches that don't have the light to dark on them. Okay. And the last thing I want to tell you, it's only paint. That's the best thing about paint. Paint is my number one DIY tool. It is my favorite DIY tool for everything. Walls, houses, furniture, decor. It's paint. So if you painted something and you don't like it, you just paint over it. You're out some money and you're out some time, but it's not the end of the world. So if you don't like it, you can always paint over it. I should get Matt on a podcast and talk about the amount of times. Oh my gosh. And he has always been so patient, but I'm like, we'll get a whole thing done. And it hasn't just happened with that blue wall. We've done it in flip houses. And I'm like, no, this isn't going to work. And then we have to repaint the whole thing. So it's only paint. It's basically, it's just your time and some money that you're out. But it's the best DIY. It's the least inexpensive way to change anything in your home. So like I'm saying, walls, the outside of your house, furniture in your house, decor in your house. It's the least expensive way to make the biggest impact. It'll give you the biggest bang for your buck, just because you can change the entire look of something just by some paint. And if you don't like it, you can always repaint over it. So, it's not the end of the world. I want to encourage you to paint it. Don't get scared, whatever it is you're painting. But so use these tips and it'll definitely help you pick the best color for your spaces the next time you're looking at paint. So let's kind of just go through a little recap of some of the things that I talked about today. So number 1, choose a color based on the decorations, the furniture. If you're painting your wall, you want to choose a color for your wall by the stuff that you already have. So you're not having to go buy new things. Number 2, what are your Pinterest boards saying? What are you gravitating towards when you're pinning and looking at different things online? Number 3, neutrals are always good, but that doesn't mean all your walls have to be white. You definitely can have a neutral with a color on your walls. Number 4, don't commit from swatches in the store alone. Definitely do not commit just from what you see on the swatches. Do some of these other things to get the exact right color. Number 5, make sure you hold up different swatches together in the store to kind of narrow down your choices. Buy samples. Buy samples, buy samples, buy samples. It's the surefire way to get the exact color you need. Use a roller when you put the paint color on your walls, and put it at the middle of your wall. Don't try to tuck it in a space so nobody sees it. You have committed to painting this space, so that's okay. Put some swatches on your wall, and don't put them down in the corner. Put them in the middle of the wall so you can kind of see that color good, and you don't have to find it or look at it in a dark space. And look at that color at different times throughout the day for a couple of days. And it's amazing how the colors change throughout the day. And you'll definitely come away knowing or eliminating some and liking others. So definitely look at it throughout the day. Take into account Sheens. Different Sheens will give you a different color. Kind of think about what you want. Different paint brands have different products, but if it's a high traffic area, you want to make sure that you can wipe that paint. If you get little handprints or something on there. So just think about the Sheen. It will change the color. And then look at your undertones. So, if something's leaning a little more blue or green, make sure you take into account the undertones because you want to get the exact color you want. And then lastly, it's only paint, right? It's only paint. We can paint over it if we don't love it. So I hope these tips help you if you are painting a room, painting a house. I would love to see it. Tag me on Instagram at My Creative Days. Share it on Facebook. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I am grateful that you tune in every week and that you share the show with your family and friends. I love having creative chit chats with you, and my hope is that this podcast will inspire you to try a new project, start a DIY that you've been putting off, and decorate your home exactly how you want it. There are a few ways you can help us with the podcast. Follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you could take a few minutes to leave the podcast a review, that would help us so much. Again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to our chat next week.